Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for another live stream episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I really appreciate it. It's no secret that from time to time I like to mix things up, and that's what we're going to do on tonight's show. Instead of bringing a Dogman eyewitness on to talk about their encounter or encounters, to mix things up a bit, I decided to bring an author on who's written books about Dogman encounters. This author, on tonight's show, not only is she going to talk about her books, but she's also going to share some of those encounters with you that eyewitnesses have in turn shared with her. Well, without any further delay, let's bring her in here now.
Hi, Vic. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks so much for coming. I appreciate it. Tonight's guest is Luka T. Jacobs, by the way. Luka, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Okay, I'm barely holding on to my 40s. I live in Australia, just south of Sydney with my partner and my dog Finnegan. In my 20s and 30s, I travelled quite extensively to the United States, and Yellowstone became my absolute favourite place in the world. I lived in various places over there, like Chicago, Minneapolis, and a small town named Ely near the Canadian border in Minnesota. I volunteered there for a year with a non-profit black bear organisation. I also lived in Calgary, Canada for a while too, and loved driving out to Banff and seeing the wildlife. I think that's about it.
Wow, I can only imagine the culture shock. Being from Australia and then living in the States and Chicago especially, and then moving up to Calgary at one point. What kind of a culture shock was that for you?
Well, we do, like in terms of the weather shock, I miss the snow so much. We do get it in Australia, particularly, like, you know, obviously the mountain areas and down south in Victoria, but probably the lowest temperature I ever experienced was up in Calgary, and that was, I think, minus 43. And I went walking in it because we were hungry, so we went walking a couple of blocks. And the icicles on the nose, that was very interesting. Never had that happen before, but I guess the biggest culture shock was living in the tiny town up near the border there. I think it was about 2,500 people. And so that was small town sort of thing, the normal things that happen with small towns. That was something to get used to, and going through a winter as well. Wasn't much to do up there. So, yeah, it was a bit of a shock, but I usually can adapt to anything, so I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a shock. I can only imagine what you went through. Wow. Night and day.
Yeah, it was. I needed a lot of melatonin, I was told.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Because of the lack of sunlight. So it was all things to get used to, you know, you roll with it.
Oh, I'm sure there was a list. I don't doubt that.
Mm-hmm.
Does your family know about your fascination with dogmen and werewolves, Luka?
Absolutely. When I first got into the interest with them and Sasquatch, it was about 2016, 17, I think it was, and I got my sister into listening to them as well, so she loves them. Probably not as obsessed as myself. And my partner, Adam, he listens all the time. He falls asleep to them. If we go driving, we put on the podcast. And we watch, you know, as many YouTube videos as we can, or any documentaries. He's really interested as well. And when the time comes, he always offers suggestions for the books as well. So, it's really handy having someone, interested in the same sort of topics as yourself, particularly when you are pretty much obsessed with it.
Well, I'm sure that must help quite a bit. I'm sure it's a given that some of your family members from time to time that they make recommendations on what you should put in your books about angles for stories and things like that. Do they ever do that?
Oh, yes. It was funny. My brother-in-law he was visiting, and I was telling him that I was in the middle of, I think it was my second night of the Dogman book, and he was like, "Oh, can you put me in there? And, I'll be this tough character and all this sort of thing." So I put his namesake in there and his partner, and ended off killing them off and in a pretty gruesome way. He loved it, but I thought, hey, I'll put you in there, but if it's to do with a Dogman, you're really not going to last too long in the chapter. So I had fun with it, and people's names, family names, and things like that, I'll throw them in too. And yeah, not many people last.
Well, at least he was a good sport about it. That's good.
He had no choice. It had been published. So.
That's funny. Before we roll on, Mom Spaghetti made a donation, and I just want to thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate you. I do. Luka, you've always had a fear of werewolves, which is probably really surprising to most of us listening to tonight's show, considering the fact you write books about werewolves and dogmen. How strong has that fear been of them?
Yeah, I am a bit of a contradiction. It was growing up, my friends, my family, particularly my sister, she can vouch for that anytime, you wanted to upset me, you'd just say the name werewolf or the word werewolf, and it worked. And I could always watch any sort of horror except werewolf. They just they fascinated me, but at the same time creeped the hell out of me. So it wasn't, I guess, until 2017 when I was reading the Sasquatch books, and someone in one of the encounter stories said that, they'd seen an upright standing canine. And I'm like, and I'm like, oh, okay, what's this thing? And they said Dogman, and I was like, oh, okay. So I would listen to your encounter stories, and never would I want to actually see one, but just the thought of that existing out there. And as you say, it doesn't have to be a rural setting for them to be seen. It was just, I don't know, I was incredibly intrigued by it, but at the same time terrified at the thought of ever seeing one, but just that they existed.
Yeah, that they do. Unfortunately, they're definitely out there. Has that fear of werewolves waned over the years at all, though?
No. I think, well, certainly not, because even though I write about it, and obviously you got to go into that headspace of what you're writing about, and, if you are writing about a particular encounter, you're in that headspace, you're fearful yourself to a degree, obviously, but you've got control there. But even, when I go outside at night and I live in suburbia, I still think, once in a while I'll look for eye shine or anything like that, and it would be the weirdest place to see one, but is to say that it's not possible that something creepy, because I like to stay up late, so I'm always out there outside, in the wee hours, so I'm always looking for it. So I still do fear that if I ever saw one, absolutely I'd just probably pass out and just freeze in place and, drop to the floor, no doubt, if I actually saw one. So, it's probably, I've gotten a little bit better now that I write about them, but I've got control there. Obviously, in real life, you've got very little control.
Yeah, that's true. Very little when it comes to dealing with these guys. But, hopefully you never will have an encounter with these guys. The odds of you actually having an encounter are so slight that it's probably not even worth worrying about.
Well, that's the plan. I'd rather have... I think I'd rather have an encounter with a Sasquatch, but certainly at a distance, and when I'm in a car, so I can get away. But a Dogman or a werewolf, no thanks. So I'm just happy to write about them and control the narrative.
Yeah, can't say I blame you there at all. I don't. Well, before we talk about your books and the encounters that have been shared with you from eyewitnesses, as it would turn out, your brother-in-law, from what I understand, has had a Dogman encounter of his own. What more can you tell us about his experience?
Yeah, I believe so. He was up a couple of months ago, and obviously he comes up every now and again, and we're always watching, say, the Yowie videos or a Sasquatch documentary, and he's always been interested in it when we talk about it. And I was mentioning, because I showed him one of my books, and it's like, is this a wolf? And I said, it's called Dogman, and explained what they are. And I said, yeah, he's got he's got a couple of encounter stories from Australia on the podcast too. And when I was telling him that, I was looking obviously at his face, and it was a light bulb moment with him. I could see his face just sort of changed, and he was thinking, and he mentioned that a few years back he was travelling in a truck. I think he was driving with a mate or a fellow employee, and it was a dark country road or something, late at night, and he said the headlights caught an animal on the side of the road, and at first he thought it was a dog, like it was the middle of nowhere, so obviously it was either a feral dog or a stray. And he said as they came up upon it and obviously drove past it, he said it just didn't seem right. And sort of, you see a animal on the side of the road that's native to the area, it doesn't give you that sort of dread feeling. Well, it shouldn't. And this one did, and he said it looked like it had mange. It was really large, but it was skinny. And it just looked sort of disproportioned, like its front legs, like it was on all fours, but its front legs were shorter than the back legs. And he said it just didn't look right, and it didn't feel right. And he said, I just thought maybe it was a deformed Great Dane or something mixed with a German Shepherd. And I said, you never know. You could have seen one of these things. And being that it was, out in the middle of nowhere, then it's highly likely that it was, if it was that strange and it gave you that instant feel of dread. So he was a little spooked by that, but happened a while ago. So, I wonder if, next time he drives a lonely road at night, he'll keep his eyes out.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. Once bitten, twice shy. That's how it normally goes.
That's right.
That's it. All right, Luka, what can you tell us about your books? Please tell us all about the books, and if you're up for sharing encounters that are in some of the books, then that'd be even better yet.
Absolutely. All right, so I write books about Sasquatch, and I've also written ones about Yowies. There's been a few in there, particularly one of the Yowie ones I was contacted by a lady who lives in New South Wales here in Australia, that she'd been having encounters on her property near the Pilliga. So I wrote alongside her, her and True Encounters Surviving the Pilliga. That's called, I should probably know what I call my books, huh? That one is called, They Own the Night, Surviving the Pilliga. But my most popular books would have to be called The Night of the Dogman trilogy. And that was the first book I wrote. And I started with Dogman, even though, as I said, it always sort of terrified me a bit more than, say, Sasquatch does. It was probably because when I've gone through every book I can possibly read about Sasquatch. I also started reading all the werewolf ones I could find. And that's when I decided, okay, having no experience and no idea what I was doing, I thought I'd write a book of my own. And so I did, and that turns out to be the most popular one I've written, and it's still doing exceptionally well. Then people were like, okay, you're going to write a second. And I was like, oh my gosh, people liked it. That's great. I'll write the second. And then I did the third, carrying it on. So that, yeah, as I said, that one's called Night of the Dogman. I also have one that's titled Monsters Among Us, Terrifyingly True Sasquatch and Yowie Encounters. Now, those are ones I put on a post on Reddit, deep dive of Reddit, and people contacted me with their true encounters from Sasquatch and also Dogman. So I think I'll read a few of the real encounters first, and then I'll dive into a couple of chapters from Night of the Dogman series, if that's all right with you, Vic.
Please do. That'd be great.
Alrighty, so the Dogman encounter true ones. Some of these are pretty creepy. I might creep myself out while I read them. But, alright, so this one's, the first one's titled Night at the Roadhouse. And this one happened in Idaho. Okay, so I'll just read through it. Excuse me. Alright, my name is Huck, and I've been a trucker for over 20 years. Born and raised in Idaho, I've driven these roads more times than I can count. I've seen my fair share of weird things out there, but nothing quite like what happened one chilly November night at a roadhouse just off Highway 95. I was hauling a load of potatoes down to Boise and decided to pull over for the night. The roadhouse was a popular spot for truckers, a small diner with a big parking lot, always a few rigs parked overnight. I found a spot near the back, turned off the engine and settled in for some much-needed shut-eye. The night was clear and the air had a bite to it, a reminder that winter was here. The parking lot was quieter than usual, with only a few other trucks scattered around. I closed my eyes and tried to drift off, but for some reason sleep wouldn't come. After tossing and turning for what felt like hours, I finally gave up and decided to get out and have a smoke. I stepped out of the cab and lit up a cigarette, the ember glowing bright in the dark. The night was eerily quiet, not a sound except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. It was spooky, to be honest, like the calm before the storm. I looked around, seeing the dark shapes of other trucks silhouetted against the dim glow of the roadhouse's neon sign. Something didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I don't get spooked easily, so I took a deep drag and tried to shake off the unease, chalking it up to being overtired. After a few minutes, I finished my cigarette, flicked the butt away, and climbed back into the truck. I laid back down, hoping sleep would come easier this time. It couldn't have been more than 20 minutes later when I was jolted awake by a strange noise. It was a scraping sound, like something dragging across metal, followed by a blowing noise, almost like a deer makes. My heart started pounding in my chest, and I strained to listen. The noise stopped for a moment, then started up again, louder this time. I sat up in my bunk, peering out the window. The parking lot was dark, and I couldn't see much behind or beyond the dim glow of the diner. The noise continued, scraping and blowing, unnerving me. I'd never heard anything like it before. Out of my peripheral vision, I saw a movement between the trucks. At first I thought it was a wolf, but something was seriously off. It was walking on two legs, hunched over, and it had hands similar to a raccoon's. Its lower body was skinny, but the top half looked like it was pure muscle. I could only see it from the back, but it was enough to make my blood pressure skyrocket. It was slightly hunched as it sniffed the air, then it headed towards another truck parked a few spaces away. Is that a freaking werewolf? I thought. My brain whirled, attempting to process the sight before me. It looked like a wolf, but wolves don't walk on two legs. I watched in horror as it reached the other truck, disappearing into the shadows. The blowing noise came again, louder and more insistent. I wanted to get out of there, to start the engine and drive away as fast as I could. But I didn't want it to notice me. I couldn't move, couldn't think. All I could do was sit there, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the spot where the creature had disappeared. I'm 55 years old, and nothing has ever terrified me like that creature did. After a while, the noise stopped, the night was silent again, and I tried to calm my breathing. I laid back down, pulling the blanket up to my chin, ears straining for any sound. I don't know how long I lay there, tense and trembling, but eventually exhaustion took over, and I drifted off to sleep. I woke up to the harsh light of the morning, the events of the night before, feeling like a bad dream, but the unease was still there, a lingering sense of dread that wouldn't go away. I climbed out of the truck, looked around the parking lot. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I quickly did my pre-trip inspection, eager to get back on the road and put as much distance between me and that roadhouse as possible. As I pulled out of the lot, I vowed never to stop there again. Whatever that thing was, I didn't want to see it again. That's pretty spooky, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'd say so. Gosh, spooky enough until something spookier comes along.
That's right. This one got me when I first read it. And these, these have been edited just for flow and things like that, if they needed it. So, this next one is probably the one that freaked me out, even amongst all the Sasquatch ones too. So, you'd like me to read that one?
Please do. The more the merrier.
All right. Let's just see. Okay. So this one's called The Face Under the Porch. And this happened up in British Columbia. Okay. I've got to tell you a story that's been haunting me for years. My name's Jason, and I'm 26 now, living in Vancouver. I moved here for college, wanting to put some distance between myself and the place where this story takes place. My parents have a rural property outside of Kamloops, BC, and I hated it ever since we moved there when I was 15. I never could quite explain why. It was just never felt right to me. My parents, though, they absolutely loved the place. Recently, I decided it was time for my girlfriend Emily to meet my folks. She'd been curious about my reluctance to visit it, my childhood home, and why I seemed uneasy whenever it came up in conversation. I thought maybe facing it head-on would help, so we flew into Kamloops, hired a car, and started the drive out to the property. It was around 7 p.m. in early May, with the sun just dipping below the horizon. As we pulled down the long gravel driveway, I felt that familiar knot of unease tighten my stomach. The driveway was flanked by tall trees on either side, and the house sat at the end like an island of refuge, or in my case, a place of dread. My parents had installed a motion-operated light on the front porch, but it didn't do much to cut through the encroaching darkness. I even commented to Emily about how useless that light was, trying to mask my nerves with a bit of humour. We parked and got out of the car. I grabbed Emily's hand, partly for comfort and partly to reassure her. As we walked towards the porch, I stopped suddenly. There was something under the porch, just at the edge of the dim light. I pulled Emily back towards the car, quickly, my heart pounding. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion and concern. "Just get in the car," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We climbed back in, and I backed up the driveway, not taking my eyes off the porch. Once we were a safe distance away, Emily demanded to know what had happened. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down before explaining. When I got closer to the porch, I saw a face under there. At first, I thought it was just a dog or something, but then it grinned at me, like an evil Joker's grin, all teeth and malice. It was like a wolf's face, but not quite. It had this sinister look in its eyes. Its face was pure evil. Emily looked at me, her eyes wide. "Are you sure it wasn't just a neighbour's dog or something?" I shook my head. No way. It was too large, and I've never seen a dog look like that thing before. It's like it wanted me to see it, and it wanted me to be terrified. I don't know how, but I know, but I do. I called my parents from the road and told them what I saw. They were angry and brushed it off, insisting it was probably a neighbour's dog. I wasn't convinced and refused to go back. We agreed to meet in town at a restaurant instead. Over dinner, I tried to convince them to move, but they were adamant about staying. The rest of the trip was uneventful, but that encounter refuses to leave my mind. I will never go back to that property. Emily believed me, and we talked about it here and there, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. To this day, my parents still live there, but I've never set foot on that land again. There's something out there, something that doesn't want me around, and I'm more than happy to oblige. Yeah, creepy.
Yeah, I'd say that is awfully creepy. Wow. How often do new eyewitnesses reach out to you, Luka, to share encounters with you, and how do they find you normally?
Well, this True Encounters book, I just, because, I love Reddit, and I'm always reading on there, and I just thought and I didn't think I'd have any success. I just thought I'd put a few comments on people that had already commented saying that they'd had encounters. And I just said to them, hey, I'm new at being an author, interested in putting a book together about true encounters. If you wanted to reach out, then please message me. And gradually people started to over a couple of months, and I was shocked and surprised at just how many. And a lot of them didn't have good encounters, as you'd expect. So I just did that. So I might do that again in the future. I've got a few over from the last book that didn't make it in just due to, page count and things like that. But there's plenty, as you know, there's plenty of people out there with experiences that really change their lives.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I know that all too well, unfortunately. For anyone listening who has had an encounter, who would like to reach out to you and share their encounter with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can do that via email, lukatjacobs@gmail.com, or visit my website, which is lukatjacobs.com.
Well, that makes it easy. And of course, I'll post that information in the description for tonight's show. That'll make it real easy for anyone to find it later on after the fact. Well, sorry to interrupt you when you're sharing those experiences, those encounters. Would you mind sharing some more with us?
Absolutely. Now this one's from Kentucky, and it's titled Pawpaw's, I think that's how it's pronounced, Pawpaw's Story. Howdy y'all, the name's Richard, and I've got a story that's been passed down from my pawpaw that still makes my hair stand on end every time I think about it. Pawpaw was 30 years old when this happened, living on an old family property out in Kentucky. Now, he was a no-nonsense kind of man, but this tale always left him with a haunted look in his eyes. It was a chilly fall morning, and Pawpaw had gotten up early, as he always did, to have his coffee before the sun came up. The first hints of dawn were just starting to creep over the horizon. He went to sit on his porch, enjoying the peaceful quiet of the morning, the kind that makes you feel at one with the world. As he was sipping his coffee, he heard something that made him sit up straight. It was the sound of a baby crying, coming from down by the creek. Now, Pawpaw had neighbours, but they weren't that close, and this sound was too near for comfort. It was a haunting, gut-wrenching cry that sent a chill right down to his bones. He sat there listening, trying to make sense of it. His heart was beating faster, and he felt a mix of worry and curiosity. The sound was so out of place, so wrong, that he couldn't just ignore it. But being a cautious man, he decided to go back inside and grab his shotgun, just to be safe. With a shotgun in hand, he headed down towards the creek, following the crying sound. The closer he got, the sicker he felt. It was like his stomach was tied up in knots, and he started to feel a deep sense of dread. He was about to turn back when he saw movement between two bushes. What he saw next nearly made him trip over his own feet. There, crouched down between the bushes, was a black wolf. This was no ordinary wolf. It was making the baby crying sound, and it looked like it was a mixed It looked like it was mixed with a hyena. Its fur was matted and patchy, like it had mange. The creature's eyes were cold and sinister, and it gave off a sense of malevolence that Pawpaw had never seen before, or never felt before. The sight of that thing made his blood run cold. He was so shocked and scared that he forgot about the shotgun in his hands. All he could think about was getting away from there as fast as he could. He turned and ran back to the house, not stopping until he was back inside with the door shut tight behind him. Pawpaw never saw that creature again, and he was damn glad about it. He was a tough man, not easily scared, but that morning left him shaken to his core. He told the story many times, always with the same haunted look in his eyes, and it always creeped the hell out of me when he did. He never did figure out what that creature was or why it was making that awful baby crying sound. Some folks said it was a skinwalker. Others thought it might be some kind of evil spirit. But whatever it was something that didn't belong in our world. As I sit here telling you all this story, I can still see Pawpaw's face, lined with age and wisdom, his eyes filled with the memory of that terrifying encounter. It's a story that become a part of our family's lore, a reminder that there are things out there that we can't explain, things that can shake even the strongest of men. It would shake me.
Oh, definitely. When I've spoken with eyewitnesses, some men have been embarrassed because of how frightened they are about their encounter or encounters. And like I tell them, I mean, even the toughest guys have been just rattled to the core by their encounter or encounters. There was a guy, episode 10, had an eyewitness who used to bare knuckle fist fight, and not because he wasn't very good at it either. He used to bare knuckle fist fight, and I think he's 6'4", 6'5", and he's like 270, 275. And yeah, his encounter, it shook him to the core. And if his experience could rattle a guy like that, that's that strong and tough, then I don't care who you are. You shouldn't be embarrassed by your fear that was a direct result from your encounter.
Absolutely. Yeah. That would rattle me just, as he said, just from hearing the story. It's creepy enough, but living it, something else. That's next level.
Oh, it definitely is. No judgment here, Luka, but do you ever try to help eyewitnesses come to terms with their encounters, or do you just collect their encounters?
Well, this was the first time that I'd done it. So, and having no prior experience, I didn't think, if they'd asked for help, absolutely I would have given it, even if I didn't know how to help. But, you know, if it happens, if I do this again, the True Encounters one, I definitely try to help them and let them know that, hey, if they wanted to talk about that in more depth or need help looking for ways to deal with it, absolutely I would. But the ones I did, they sort of just, some didn't even leave their names. They didn't want to, be found and or anyone to find out that they'd had this sort of experience. So they sort of just dumped the story and that was it. I couldn't reply to them or they wouldn't reply back. And others, I'm still in contact to this day with. We just chat about these sorts of things and, some are willing and some are not willing to, talk about it too much. They want it out there, but that's it sort of thing.
Well, I bet you'd be surprised if you knew how many people you actually have helped by doing nothing more than just sitting there and listening to them share their experiences. I mean, for a lot of eyewitnesses, if you just do that, that's a huge help.
Yeah, I think with anything in life, if, people, they want to be heard. And when it's something like this sort of topic that your eyes don't believe it, let alone your friend that you've told that you've experienced this, you can hardly believe it. And it takes a while for you yourself to understand what you've seen. So it would be a very hard time for people to go through. But except that something like that, hey, we're told it doesn't exist, yet it's right in front of you. That would really, that would stir your mind up quite considerably, I think.
Yes, it would. Like I tell eyewitnesses, ever since you learn how to speak and comprehend language, it's been hammered into your head that these guys don't exist, that monsters don't exist. And one day when you find out with your own two eyes that guess what? You've been living a lie. For a lot of people, that's just too much to deal with. That's why they have so much trouble coming to terms with their encounters. So, yeah, I mean, that right there is why almost every eyewitness who has a huge problem coping, why they do. It's unfortunate.
That's right. Absolutely. I've got a few others here. I'm just looking for the best one. It's quite a big book, but I could read one more of those and then I can jump across to the Night of the Dogman ones. Is that okay?
By all means, please take your time. The more the merrier.
Alrighty. This one's called A Strange Welcome, and this happened in Missouri. Hey y'all, my name's Bob and I'm a country boy from Tennessee. Now, I ain't never been one to believe in UFOs or tall tales, but I got to tell you about something that happened to my wife Jenny and me when we moved to Missouri a few years back. This story still makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I ain't one to scare easy. Jenny and I had been married for about 10 years when we decided to pack up and move to a new semi-rural home in Missouri. The job was relocating us, and the thought of a fresh start sounded good. The house was nice, a bit old-fashioned, but had plenty of charm, and it was nestled in some beautiful countryside. We figured it'd be a peaceful place to settle down. About a month after we moved in, Jenny was outside one sunny afternoon, hanging clothes on the line. I was inside, trying to fix the old creaky door that wouldn't stay shut. She hollered at me to come out, but I was too busy wrestling with the door. Later she told me she thought she saw our neighbour's dog out in the field a few 100 feet away. Something about it wasn't right. She said it moved different, like its front legs were too long. Roy, it was the strangest thing she said when she came back inside. That dog just didn't look right. Probably just a stray, I said. This is the country after all. A week went by and things were quiet. Then one evening, just before dusk, Jenny saw it again. This time it was up on the hill, and there were two of them. One of them stood up on two legs, clear as day. Now, I ain't never seen Jenny so scared. She came running inside, white as a ghost. Roy, I saw it again, and it stood up like a person, she exclaimed, her voice shaking. I laughed it off, thinking she was just spooked. You sure you didn't see a bear or something? Bears can stand on their hind legs, you know. No, Roy, it wasn't no bear. It was like a dog, but bigger and just wrong, she insisted. Jenny, being the persistent woman she is, decided to ask our neighbour about it. The next day, she walked over and struck up a conversation. Mrs. Capello was an older lady, been living there her whole life. When Jenny mentioned what she saw, Mrs. Capello got quiet, real quiet. Haven't you noticed people don't go outside after dark? She finally said, giving Jenny a look that chilled her to the bone. Jenny came home even more rattled, and I could see the fear in her eyes. I tried to reassure her, but deep down I was starting to get a little uneasy myself. Over the next few months, things got strange. We'd hear noises at night, like something moving around outside. It was subtle at first, just rustling in the bushes or the occasional low growl. But as time went on, the sounds got louder and more frequent. One night I swore I heard something scratching at the back door. I grabbed my shotgun and went to check, but there was nothing there. Jenny refused to go outside after dark, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. I started to feel like we were being watched, and every little noise set me on edge. Our peaceful countryside home had turned into a place of fear and an uncertainty. 6 months after we moved in, Jenny's job relocated us again, and I can't say I was sad to leave. The night before we packed up, I went outside to get some air. The moon was full, and the whole place was lit up like it was daytime. As I stood there taking in the quiet, I saw them, those two creatures standing on the hill, watching our house. They didn't move, just stood there as if to say goodbye. I didn't tell Jenny about that last sighting. She was scared enough as it was. We packed up the next day and left, and I couldn't have been more relieved. That's crazy.
It really is a shame that people have to have experiences like this. It really is.
Absolutely. Now, the night of the Dogman ones. So I'll read, I think I've got a chapter here from the first one, and then I'll read a few chapters from the third book. Okay, so the first chapter I'm going to read here just gives the listeners an idea of how it all starts. Okay? All right, a strange sighting. Adam sat on his porch, the warmth of his coffee mug cradled in his hands as he watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Fletcher, his border collie, lay at his feet, contentedly gnawing on a stick, unaware of the events about to unfold. The wildlife of southern Missouri countryside stirred around him. The rustle of leaves as deer passed through the trees, the distant call of a bobcat, the quick darting movement of a raccoon. It was a scene familiar to Adam, a part of the rhythm of his daily life. Excuse me. As Adam sat on the porch, his mind wandered back to his past life, reminiscing about the last time he felt truly content. It was a vivid memory of the day spent at a water park with Amber and Layla just a week before their untimely deaths. The joyous laughter and playful splashing of his wife and daughter had warmed his heart in a way nothing else could. He cherished those memories of his family, holding them close like precious treasures in the depth of his soul. Adam was lost in thought, his gaze unfocused, when something caught his eye. A dark figure swiftly moving across the rolling hills in the distance. Initially dismissing it as a trick of light or a mere figment of his imagination, Adam's unease grew as he continued to watch. A chill ran down his spine. Instinctively, Adam reached for the binoculars he kept nearby, raising them to his eyes and zooming in on the mysterious creature. It resembled a large coyote or coy dog, its sleek black fur glistening in the morning sunlight. But there was something unsettling about it, something that filled Adam with a sense of dread. As the creature ran, Adam could see the muscles rippling beneath its fur, the dog-like muzzle and the large ears that marked it as a predator of the wilderness. But it was what happened next that caused his heart to skip a beat. The creature halted abruptly, its gaze locking with Adam's across the distance. Then, to Adam's horror, it effortlessly rose onto two legs, displaying an eerie sense of comfort in its posture. Time seemed suspended as Adam stared into the creature's dark, penetrating eyes, witnessing it sniffing the air, igniting a primal fear within him. Adam couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. "What the heck is that?" he whispered to himself, the words barely audible over the pounding of his heart. Its head resembled a mix of a wolf and a German shepherd. Its coat appeared pristine, thick and dark, likely dark brown or black, depending on the light. Even from afar, Adam noticed its fur gently swaying in the breeze, its muscular and powerful body adorned with broad shoulders and sturdy legs. Its eyes, hazel or yellow, held a predatory gleam. Its elongated, muscular arms culminated in razor-sharp claws, exuding a menacing aura. Despite the distance and lack of size comparison, Adam could discern the creature's immense size. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the creature dropped back to all fours and continued on its way, disappearing into the trees beyond. Adam sat frozen on the porch, his mind reeling with disbelief at what he had just witnessed. Fletcher stirred at his feet, sensing his master's unease, but Adam could only stare off into the distance, his thoughts consumed by the encounter. A feeling of foreboding enveloped him, like a heavy shroud, darkening the once tranquil surroundings. Adam rose from his seat and made his way inside. The image of the mysterious creature burned in his mind. As he closed the door behind him, question lingered in his thoughts. Why did that animal make me feel so fearful? like I hadn't felt before. It looked like a werewolf, but those aren't real. Despite his rationalizations, a lingering unease settled in his gut. He knew that something had changed, that the tranquility of his solitary existence had been shattered by the presence of something dark and unknown lurking in the shadows of the southern Missouri wilderness. So that was the first chapter of Night of the Dogman. And then we've got, and I'll just read now, chapter 1 of the third book. And that one's called Vengeance, the third book. All right, this should spook a few listeners out. Spooked me writing it. All right, chapter 1. The headlights of the Audi cut through the darkened landscape as David and Sheila made their way home on Route 60. The day had been long, filled with shopping in Springfield, her favourite pastime. David, ever the dutiful husband, trailed behind her in silence, his thoughts elsewhere as she gleefully spent his money. He had grown accustomed to her constant demands and complaints, so much so that her voice became little more than background noise, easily tuned out. Tonight was no different. They were nearing Willow Springs, and the clock on the dashboard glowed 9:38 p.m. Sheila was in mid-rant, her words sharp and I'll give up on that word right now. But David's responses were automatic. Yes, dear, he muttered, whenever she paused for breath, not really hearing what she said. His mind wandered, contemplating the trap of his marriage and the bitter reality that leaving would cost him everything he worked for as a successful orthodontist. She had no respect for him, that much was clear, and though he longed to be free, he knew the consequences would be devastating. At least they never wanted kids, he mused. As they approached a dark corner, he turned to her, offering her a half-hearted reply to whatever she was complaining about. But the voice suddenly cut through the air with a scream. Watch out! David snapped his eyes back to the road just in time to see something dark and hulking appear out of nowhere, clipping the front right of the car with a sickening thud. He slammed on the brakes, the Audi skipping to a stop on the gravel shoulder. His heart pounded as he tried to comprehend what had just happened. What the hell are you doing? You could have killed me, you idiot. Sheila's voice was shrill, her fear marked by anger. It was a dog or something. I think I hit someone's dog, he muttered, already opening the door. Who cares? It's dark and freezing out there. Just leave it. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to check. It was still on the road. If it was still on the road, it could cause another accident. Ignoring her protests, David stepped out, the cold night air biting at his skin. The only light came from his cell phone as he cautiously moved to the back of the car, scanning the area. His breath fogged in the chill, and the silence of the night seemed to close in around him. There, lying in the road just behind the car, he saw it. At first glance, it looked like a dog, mangy, large, and pitifully injured. It was dragging itself along the asphalt, its legs twisted at unnatural angles. His heart ached at the sight. He'd always loved dogs, but Sheila would never allow one in their home. Slowly he walked closer, the beam of his phone light trembling as he took in the scene. But as the light fully illuminated the creature, a chill deeper than the night air seeped into his bone. This dog was unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was enormous, its body grotesque and malformed. Then it stopped moving. David watched, paralyzed, as the creature began to rise, unfolding itself, he thought numbly. As it did, sickening sound filled the night like the cracking of bones, each snap echoing in his ears and making his stomach drop. It stood on two legs, towering over him at nearly 8 feet tall. The once limp form had transformed into a monstrous figure, covered in thick, matted fur that clung to its powerful frame. Its legs were muscular and bent like a dog's, ending in clawed canine feet that dug into the earth with every step. The creature's hands were grotesque and elongated fingers that ended in razor-sharp claws. perfect for tearing flesh. Its face was a nightmarish visage of pure beast, a long lupine snout with rows of gleaming sharp teeth, and ears that glowed with a cold, calculating focus. A pair of pointed ears twitched as it locked its gaze onto his, its eyes narrowing with an intent that made his skin crawl. Then, to his horror, it cocked its head and smirked, the expression chillingly human on an otherwise monstrous face. Sheila's impatient voice cut through David's terror, her complaints growing frantic as she berated him for leaving her in the car, oblivious to the danger. But the creature's attention had already shifted past David, locking onto the car. Its eyes gleamed with a predatory hunger as it licked its chops, the smirk twisting into something far more sinister. His paralysis broke and he spun around, heart thudding in his ears. But before he could take a step, searing pain exploded through him as the beast leapt onto his back, its claws sinking deep into his shoulders and raking down his spine, tearing through flesh and muscle. His screams pierced the night, a raw, desperate sound that was abruptly cut short as the creature yanked him back up with inhuman strength. With terrifying force, it slammed him against the car, the impact shattering his ribs and sending a shockwave of pain through his body. One of the broken ribs punctured his lung and gasped, choking on blood as it filled his mouth. His breath came in ragged, shallow bursts, each one more laboured than the last. The Dogman wasn't finished. It clawed viciously at his chest, ripping through skin and muscle, leaving deep, jagged wounds that oozed dark blood. The pain was unbearable, but his screams had turned to wet gurgles of blood filled his throat. He slumped to the ground, dazed and barely conscious, his vision dimming as the creature loomed over him, emitting a rumbling growl that reverberated through his entire body, a sound of pure, merciless menace. Every breath he took was agony, his body rapidly failing as the blood loss and internal injuries overwhelmed him. He could feel his life slipping away, his strength fading with each passing second, as the beach watched with dark, evil eyes. Sheila's voice, once sharp with impatience, was now frantic and tinged with fear. She hadn't yet seen the full extent of the horror outside, but she sensed something was terribly wrong. The creature had already shifted its attention to the car, its hunger evident in the glint of its eyes as it approached the passenger's side. She didn't notice the beast until it was right beside the car, its blood-soaked claws scraping the metal as it placed a massive hand on the door. The sound of the nails screeching against the steel made her breath hitch in her throat. She slowly turned, her eyes drawn to the dark, crimson-streaked talons that rested on the window. For a split second, confusion clouded her mind. What is that? But when she followed the line of the creature's arm upward and her gaze locked onto the face looming outside the glass, terror surged through her like an electric shock. The Dogman's hideous snout was inches from the window, its breath fogging up the glass with each exhale. Its eyes were locked onto hers, gleaming with a malevolent intelligence that sent ice through her veins. Before Sheila could even scream, the creature acted. With terrifying strength, it drove its fist through the window, the glass shattering in an explosion of shards that glinted like deadly stars in the dim light. The suddenness of the attack stole the air from her lungs, leaving her frozen in shock. Then, with deliberate slowness, it reached inside, its claws closing around her like a vice. She finally found her voice, but the scream that tore from her throat was choked and desperate, the sound of pure panic. She tried to fight, thrashing against the creature's grip, and nails clawing at its leathery skin, but it was futile. The Dogman's strength was overwhelming, its grip unyielding. With a sickening crunch, it yanked her out of the car, her body hitting the ground with bone-jarring thud. David, still struggling to stay conscious, heard Sheila's screams turned into gurgling cries as the creature's claws slashed through her flesh. The sound was a surreal symphony of tearing skin and splintering bone, each note driving deeper into its fading awareness. Blood sprayed across the pavement, painting the night in a gruesome display of violence. As the darkness crept closer to him, David's last sight was the Dogman standing over Sheila's broken body, its muzzle slick with her blood. The creature looked up, its gaze meeting his, and in that moment, David saw something that made his blood run cold. A twisted satisfaction in its eyes, as it revelled in the horror it had unleashed. Sorry about that. Because I've got a cold, it might have come off a little bit rushed.
No, you did fine. I was just thinking about what the character was going through. That's rough.
Yeah, I tried to get it out before, excuse me, coughing.
Well, like I told you before we went on the air, it is winter time down there in Australia, so
yeah.
I mean, it's flu and cold season.
Yep, everyone's got it. But yeah, David, he went through the ringer in that chapter, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, that's a rough way to go out. Really rough. Yeah. That is.
So that one's Night of the Dogman, so that series. So as I said, that's been the most popular. So if people are interested in the books, I'd love them to check it out or send me a message if they need to. That'd be cool.
So that everyone listening knows, just to remind you, I am going to post links to the links that I mentioned before posting to make it really easy to find Luka's books, to not only purchase them, but also to contact her if you have an encounter that you'd like to share with her. That'll make it really easy that way. But now I've said that, are you ready to answer some questions from the listeners?
Absolutely.
Great. Well, the first one I'm going to put up there is from KRB, and KRB wants to know, she says, I'm late to the party, but are all these encounters primarily in Oz?
Absolutely not. The majority, the ones from the True Encounters book, they're North American. I don't believe I have any Oz ones whatsoever. Not in the True Encounters one. So, yeah, I think that answers that one, doesn't it? I think if she was referring to the true ones, yeah.
That does answer it. I'm sure you've listened to several of the encounters who have been on the show, several of the eyewitnesses from Australia who had encounters there who came on the show and shared their encounters, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, you've had one from up in Queensland, the Currumbin Valley. That one's freaky. I've listened to that multiple times, and I always put people onto that one. And I think there was another one in Perth, and there's been a couple, that you've done from Australia. And there was one, actually, gentleman, he took a photo of one, and that's about 40 minutes from where I live. So, that was a little freaky finding out that one was so close.
Wow. Yeah, that is close.
But no, answering that question, there wasn't anything in the True Encounters book from Oz, no.
All right, well, the next question is from Bang Bang, and she wants to know, she says, might be a dumb question, but did Luka have an encounter? And she already answered that, Bang Bang, I think before you came into the chat room. But yeah, she said she has not had an encounter and hopes never to have one.
No, thank you. If I could choose, no, I don't want one, no thanks. I'd live my life quite happy never seeing one myself.
Well, that's understandable. Like I said, I hope you never do have one. The next one up is from Andres Carrizales, and Andres wants to know, out of all cryptids you researched, which one do you think is most neutral to people?
My opinion, Sasquatch, for sure. I think, and I know a lot of other people believe this too, as much as we can know about them, obviously, but the Dogman comes off a bit more evil. It's more evil intentions. It sort of, I don't know, gives off this air of that it knows more than it's letting on, that it's like it takes, what's the word I'm trying to explain? That it just enjoys making you terrified, and it knows it can make you terrified. Whereas from the thousands of encounters I've listened to just on the podcast, you've got a range of different ones from Sasquatch, from just sightings to sort of somewhat friendly, But there's been obviously the scary ones too, and I don't doubt that there's versions of Sasquatch out there that are really scary. But Dogman, I just think Sasquatch, in answering that one quickly for you, would be, the most neutral of all.
Yeah, I can understand why you would say that, because, Dogmen don't have any soft edges.
No, not at all.
That they don't. This next one is from Bang Bang, and it's a great question. She wants to know, Luka, was there a specific encounter you researched that inspired the books?
Not really, and that is a great question. Thank you. It was how it sort of started and how I write, and Lord knows if anyone else writes similar to this, but I would find that I always had, since all I can remember, I always had trouble falling asleep. And that's why I got my sort of sleep patterns from when I did live over in the States, and I'd come back and still stay on the sort of same time zone. But, I always have trouble sleeping. I'd spend about an hour just thinking before I could eventually fall asleep. And once I decided, okay, I'm going to write, it was before I decided writing, really. I would just think up these encounters in my head and, play out the scenes. And then I think about 6 months later, it's when I decided I'm going to write I'm going to write a book. Let's try that. And I would think of the scenes in my head and go, okay, all right. And then I'd obviously fall asleep. In the morning, I'd remember it, surprisingly, and then write it out as a chapter and just repeat it each night. And eventually, I got the book. So, I don't know if anyone else does it that way, but that's just how it seemed to work. And I would picture it, the scenes, what would scare me. What would scare me the most have happened, whether it be if I was driving a dark road at night or if I was at home and I saw a face in the window. I mean, all of these things would easily scare me, but it was just, how would I react to it? And if that scared me, I thought, okay, surely it's got to at least scare one more person. So that's how I ran with it.
Wow, that's got to be so convenient as an author to dream up these encounters in your sleep, in your dreams, and to be able to actually remember them when you wake up. That's got to be so convenient.
I don't remember much, but apparently I remember those, so I can run with it while it works. Yeah, might as well.
Definitely. Any advantage you can get.
That's right.
KRB has the next question for you. She wants to know, have you ever heard of an encounter where the creature had a back and forth with the witness by way of telepathy or otherwise?
No, out of all the encounters I was sent, never, there wasn't sort of anything paranormal to that. There wasn't telepathy, there wasn't anything telepathic, and there wasn't anything about portals or anything. And that actually reminds me, because I remember my sister had told me this is years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, it was down in Victoria in Australia, and she was travelling with her husband. They were going to go see this, landmark, and you had to hike to go see it. Well, she hiked up. Both of them hiked halfway up the hill, and halfway up I think maybe her knee or her hip was hurting. So she said she'll stop there, and her husband decided to go further on and actually see the landmark. So she waited there. She said it was beautiful, forest, it was the birds are chirping and all that sort of lovely stuff. And then she said, distance but not too far away, she heard this door close, and it sounded like just this steel door close in the middle of nowhere. And it wasn't like I remember her telling me about it back then, but and hopefully I've got the whole story right because she'll be listening. But that's pretty much it. And then when we were listening to the encounters on here and a few other podcasts, that metal door gets mentioned a little. So I wonder if it's got something to do with that. Is that a door to a portal, or is it something else? Because it has been mentioned on, what's that gentleman's name? He wrote the book, and I'm terrible with names. Martin Groves. He was on Dogman Encounters, I believe, wasn't he? He told about his experience, and he heard the doors too. Well, that large metallic sound. It's quite interesting, but at the same time quite freaky.
No, I've never had him on the show before. I've heard he had an encounter, but never have had him on. Okay.
So, yeah, he mentioned it a lot, and I have certainly heard it before from a lot of people that door is, something else. I don't know what it is, but, yeah. I didn't come across any of those sorts of encounters myself, no.
Yeah, talking about that metal door sound, it does make you wonder if they're being unleashed from underground or something.
Mm-hmm. That's, and I don't sort of subscribe to that sort of belief that, they're paranormal or anything, but at the end of the day, I know nothing. So it's certainly possible. That's how I see things. Anything's possible. So, yeah, who knows if they're unleashed, or they, as some people believe, they walk between the dimensions, that sort of thing. You never know. It's always possible.
Yeah, anything is. Anything is. This next question up for you is from Josie Maine Coon. And her question is, Luka, do you hear from experiencers that they have more terrifying encounters by the red-eyed dogman as opposed to the amber-eyed dogman?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would, excuse me, I hear of the amber more, and particularly from the encounters that were submitted, there were more amber than red. I don't even know if there was red, to be totally honest. So I would definitely say amber more than red, that's for sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to have to look into that myself.
Yeah, if you don't have that many red-eyed dogmen being reported as being seen to you, then it's going to be hard to make a comparison. And I haven't really noticed any difference between the percentage of aggressive dogman encounters that involved red-eyed ones versus amber ones. It seems like it's basically a toss-up.
Yeah, they're all creepy to me anyways. But I'll look into it. But like you said.
Yeah, they are all creepy, that's for sure. The next one up is from KRB. She wants to know, Luka, have any encounters been positive, ever?
Not that I've come across. And that's what leads me into the answer from the previous question about which more do I think is more neutral. And I think it's Sasquatch, because anything I've ever heard about Dogman, and particularly those true encounters that were sent to me, it's just evil. It's not coming to pat you on the back. It's not coming to enrich your life. They just have some sort of sinister way about them. So, yeah, I don't know of any that have been positive, or say, someone's fallen into the water and the dogman's helped them out. I've certainly never heard something along those lines. But, maybe I think when it comes to Sasquatch, there's good, there's bad, and there's ugly. Maybe there is this with Dogman, but because they look like the way they look, well, even if they're just standing there staring at you, you still have that feeling of evil, regardless of what they're actually doing.
It's happened before where a dogman's done something that could be construed as being a positive thing maybe, but never altruistic or anything like that, where it really went out of its way to help someone. So, yeah, normally that's just not the case. I agree.
Yeah.
I do. Michigan Meat Eater wants to know, has anyone ever offered or shown you evidence? Great show. Thank you for your time, Luka.
Thank you. No. Actually, yes, I do lie. And it was only a week or two ago. Not of Dogman, it was Yowie, actually. Yowie proof. I've had a few, and it's really cool that readers of the books have contacted me. And a few of them I've struck up friendships with. And, we've talked, and they mentioned that they did a few trips out to the Pilliga or wherever, they've gone. And they've sent through photos that they've taken of handprints on car windows and footprints and things like that. So in answering that question, yes. But Dogman, no. Probably, yeah, because, I'm not in the States. It'd probably cost a bit to send if it was actually, physical proof. But no, nothing from the States on Dogman, no.
Well, you just wait. It's probably a matter of time before people start sending you pictures, at least, and other evidence like that.
Hey, I'm open to it. I keep an open mind on pretty much everything. Always say things are possible, so I'm always happy to, talk with anyone and discuss. More than happy to do that.
Well, like I said, it's probably just a matter of time. You just wait.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got time for one more question, and I'm going to pop up the question from No More Funland. And they want to know, what cryptids are unique to Oz?
Well, we've got the Yowie, which is similar to, which is pretty much, Sasquatch, Bigfoot. What you got? Well, apparently we've also got Dogman. It's seen quite a few times. It's the Bunyip. That's not mentioned much here anymore. What else have we got? I know some Australians going to be listening to this and saying, mention this, but I don't know of any others.
Tree bears?
I know. We tell tourists that, drop bears and things like that, but no, they're really not real. I know there is different versions of the Yowie, smaller versions and things like that. I don't know their native names, so I won't try to mention that. But there's different versions, different sizes, and things like that. I think they're the main two things that we'd have in Australia. But I know the States have got a heck of a lot more than we do. I guess, you've got a lot more people than we do too, but, only the two that and the main two would be, Yowie and Dogman.
Are you sure you don't really have drop bears and flying spiders down there? Be honest now.
I can honestly say there's no such thing as a drop bear. And flying spiders, maybe if it's really windy, although, and people will say when I go across, like when I've lived in the States, they'll be like, oh, you come from Australia, you live with the deadliest animals. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no way. There's nothing that will kill you out in the bush here. Like it doesn't feel like the wilderness to me. But when I go there, you've got bears, you've got mountain lions, wolves, which are all absolutely 100% fascinating to me, and that's why I travel there a lot. But no, the American woods would kill you faster than the Australian woods. But having said that, my mum was bitten by the most dangerous spider in Australia when we were kids, and that got us a lot of interest from our friends.
Oh no!
At school, we were popular. Mum had to take the bite, so we got popular at school. But no, you very rarely see them. So I'd be more worried in the woods in the States than I would be here. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, opinions vary. When you think about saltwater crocs and fear snakes and the funnel webs you have and all the other goodies you have there, brown snakes, I think I'd rather take my chances over here.
I mean, but the crocs, they're up top north of Queensland. They're nowhere near me. And, I mean, I went to Sanibel Island in Florida, and I couldn't understand how people lived with alligators roaming around. It was just mind-boggling to me. And they're like, you come from Australia? I'm like, yeah, but we don't have them walking around in the street. Like, that's just next level to me. So, yeah, it's just different how, everyone, opinions differ on what's dangerous and what's not.
Yeah, it is. It's all in a matter of what you're used to. That's all that matters.
Right. That's right.
That's right. Well, Luka, I can't thank you enough for coming on and telling us about your books and sharing those encounters with us. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity, Vic, and I do apologize if my cold came across in the stories, but I did my best, and I thank you, everyone, for listening.
Oh, you did well. You didn't leave us wanting, so please don't apologize for anything. But having said that, thanks again so much for your time. And again, everyone listening, if you want to find the links for visiting Luka or actually sharing your encounter with Luka, if you've had an encounter that you want to share with her, if you want to find the link where you can go to purchase her books, just check out the description for tonight's show and I'll have those posted there. But like I said, thanks again so much for your time, Luka, and hope you have a great, I guess it's morning there, so I shouldn't say great night. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Vic, and take care.
Oh, you're welcome. We'll see ya. Again, I can't thank you all for listening enough and for supporting the eyewitnesses the way you do. Like I've told you countless times, it means more than you're ever going to know. And an important note so that you know, recently I released 2 new collections in the Dogman Encounter store. I published the Bear Wolf collection and also a new collection called It's the Bump in the Night collection. If you go to the description for tonight's show, you'll find a link to the store there. If you don't want to check out the description for tonight's show to get that link, it's really easy to find it in a different way. Just go to dogmenencounters.com, and in the navigation menu that drops down, you'll find a link to the store there. That makes it really easy either way. But if you've had an encounter with a dog man and would like to speak with me about it in private or on the show, please go to dogmenencounters.com, submit a report, and if you do that, then I'll contact you and we'll schedule a time to talk. But everyone, thanks again so much for listening and have a great weekend.